The war for resources was supposed to end everything, but it only began the nightmare. Two enemies, once divided by greed and hatred, now face extinction together in a world crumbling under its own weight. As oceans turn to acid, forests burn to ash, and cities choke on endless smog, survival becomes the ultimate battlefield. Can they put aside their differences before Earth takes its final breath? Or will humanity's last chapter be written in blood and ruin? This isn't just another apocalypse, it's your future. Subscribe now to witness the fight that could save us all, or doom us forever. The planet had reached its breaking point long before anyone cared to notice. Beneath layers of propaganda and corporate lies, the truth festered like an open wound ignored until too late. By the time the first global collapse hit, entire ecosystems were already beyond repair. Rivers ran black with industrial waste, air thickened into something tangible enough to taste, and soil turned barren under centuries of overuse. Humanity's insatiable hunger for power and progress didn't stop when nature screamed for mercy. Instead, it doubled down, feeding off desperation like parasites. And so, what began as skirmishes over dwindling oil reserves escalated into full-scale wars between rival nations and megacorporations vying for control of whatever scraps remained. On one side stood the Dominion Alliance, a coalition of technologically advanced states armed with cutting-edge weaponry and AI-driven strategies. Their sleek drones dominated skies poisoned by chemical fallout, while automated factories churned out supplies faster than any human workforce ever could. Opposing them were the Free Territories, a loose confederation of rebel groups and scavenger clans united not by ideology but necessity. They relied on guerrilla tactics, improvisation, and sheer grit to survive against overwhelming odds. For decades, these factions clashed across scorched battlefields, neither willing to concede defeat even as the very ground beneath their feet crumbled away. Yet none of this mattered to the planet itself. Earth wasn't interested in politics or profit margins. It responded to abuse in ways no strategist could predict. Superstorms ravaged coastlines, earthquakes swallowed cities whole, and plagues born from ecological imbalance spread unchecked. Each disaster brought new horrors, forcing people to adapt or perish. Refugees poured into overcrowded safe zones where disease and starvation claimed more lives than bullets ever did. Meanwhile, leaders on both sides continued shouting about victory, blind to the fact that winning meant nothing if there was no world left to rule. Amidst this chaos emerged two figures who would unknowingly shape the fate of their species. Neither sought greatness nor glory, they simply fought because stopping meant dying. One belonged to the Dominion, a soldier programmed since birth to follow orders without question. The other hailed from the Free Territories, hardened by years of loss and betrayal yet still clinging to hope that things might change. Though worlds apart in belief and upbringing, their paths converged at a moment when choice ceased to exist. Survival became the only law worth obeying, and cooperation the only strategy capable of averting total annihilation. Little did they know, however, that uniting enemies was merely the first step toward confronting a far greater threat, one born not from man but from the wrath of a dying planet. Centuries of exploitation had transformed Earth into a wasteland unfit for life. Once vibrant forests lay silent, reduced to skeletal remains of charred trunks and ash-covered earth. Oceans, once teeming with biodiversity, now resembled toxic soup, their waters glowing faintly under moonlight due to radiation leaks from sunken nuclear reactors. Even the atmosphere betrayed humanity, trapping heat like a suffocating blanket and birthing storms so violent they erased entire regions overnight. Every attempt to reverse the damage failed spectacularly, crushed beneath the weight of short-sighted policies and corporate greed. Scientists warned early on about tipping points, thresholds beyond which recovery became impossible. Yet warnings fell on deaf ears, drowned out by promises of economic growth and technological salvation. Carbon emissions soared unchecked, freshwater reserves dwindled to critical levels, and topsoil erosion rendered vast swaths of land useless for agriculture. Governments responded with half-hearted measures, planting trees here, banning plastics there, but such gestures amounted to little more than rearranging deck chairs on a sinking ship. The real work required sacrifices no politician dared demand, leaving ordinary citizens to bear the brunt of consequences crafted by those in power. As conditions worsened, desperation fueled conflict. Nations hoarded what little remained, launching invasions to secure water sources, arable land, or rare minerals essential for sustaining modern infrastructure. Corporations played puppet master, manipulating governments through bribes and blackmail to ensure access to lucrative markets. Entire populations were displaced, forced to flee homelands rendered uninhabitable by drought, flooding, or contamination. Refugee camps sprang up along borders, overcrowded and undersupplied, breeding grounds for disease and despair. Those lucky enough to find shelter faced bleak futures, trapped in societies struggling to cope with influxes of displaced persons. Meanwhile, climate change wreaked havoc on weather patterns, creating feedback loops that accelerated destruction. Melting polar ice caps raised sea levels, submerging coastal cities and displacing millions. Permafrost thaw released ancient viruses frozen for millennia, sparking pandemics ill-equipped healthcare systems couldn't handle. Wildfires raged uncontrollably, consuming everything in their path and releasing carbon stored within vegetation back into the atmosphere. Each catastrophe compounded others, forming a domino effect impossible to halt. In this maelstrom of devastation, humanity clung to hope embodied by technological innovation. Geoengineering projects promised to cool overheated climates, desalination plants aimed to replenish freshwater supplies, and genetically modified crops offered solutions to famine. Yet each solution carried risks of its own, unintended consequences lurking behind every breakthrough. Some questioned whether reliance on technology represented salvation or further hubris, arguing that true resolution required fundamental shifts in behavior rather than band-aid fixes. These voices remained marginalized, drowned out by louder calls for immediate action regardless of cost. Thus, Earth spiraled deeper into chaos, its inhabitants locked in cycles of destruction and denial. Few recognized the irony that efforts to dominate nature led directly to nature's rebellion. Even fewer grasped the magnitude of challenges ahead, blinded by belief in human ingenuity's limitless potential. What awaited them wasn't redemption but reckoning, a confrontation with limits imposed not by technology or ideology but by laws of physics and biology immutable to human will. Only time would reveal whether wisdom dawned soon enough to prevent irreversible collapse, or whether pride sealed humanity's fate alongside countless other species driven extinct by short-sightedness. The war between the Dominion Alliance and the Free Territories had raged for decades, fueled by ideologies as much as resources. The Dominion viewed itself as the savior of humanity, a beacon of order in a chaotic world. Its leaders spoke of progress, of rebuilding Earth through centralized control and advanced technology. They promised a future where machines would restore balance, where AI could manage ecosystems better than any human ever could. Yet beneath their polished rhetoric lay a stark reality. The Dominion's methods were as destructive as the problems they claimed to solve. Entire regions were razed to extract rare minerals needed for their machines, and dissenters were silenced with brutal efficiency. The Free Territories, on the other hand, saw themselves as freedom fighters, resisting what they perceived as tyranny. Their ranks were filled with those displaced by the Dominion's expansion, refugees, farmers stripped of their land, scientists exiled for questioning corporate motives. These rebels operated without hierarchy, relying on decentralized networks and local knowledge to survive. They scavenged what they could from ruins left behind by both nature and war, cobbling together weapons and tools from scraps of the past. Their tactics were messy, often brutal, but effective enough to keep the Dominion at bay. Yet neither side could claim moral superiority. Both factions exploited the environment in their own ways, driven by the same primal instinct, survival. The Dominion drained rivers to power its factories, while the Free Territories burned whatever fuel they could find to keep warm. Neither considered the long-term consequences of their actions. Immediate needs always took precedence. And so, the planet continued to decay, indifferent to the banners under which humans fought. It was during one particularly brutal campaign that the first signs of something far worse began to emerge. In a region once known as the Amazon Basin, now reduced to a barren wasteland, Dominion forces encountered strange phenomena. Plants mutated into grotesque forms, oozing toxic sap that corroded metal and flesh alike. Animals, already scarce, exhibited bizarre behaviors. Some attacked without provocation, others simply collapsed mid-step, their bodies unable to sustain life. Soldiers reported hearing whispers in the wind, voices that seemed to echo from the earth itself. Command dismissed these accounts as stress-induced hallucinations, but the incidents grew too frequent to ignore. Meanwhile, deep within Free Territory-controlled zones, similar anomalies surfaced. Crops failed overnight, rotting in fields despite perfect growing conditions. Wells ran dry, only to refill hours later with water that shimmered unnaturally and caused violent illness if consumed. Refugees spoke of shadowy figures moving through the wilderness, humanoid but not quite human, their eyes glowing faintly in the dark. Fear spread faster than any explanation, and superstition took root among communities already stretched thin by hardship. Unbeknownst to either faction, these events signaled the beginning of Earth's final retaliation. Centuries of abuse had pushed the planet beyond endurance, awakening ancient mechanisms buried deep within its crust. Geological shifts triggered dormant microbes, releasing organisms that thrived in environments hostile to most life forms. Chemical reactions sparked by pollution gave rise to hybrid species, blending traits of plants, animals, and fungi in ways never before seen. What emerged was neither wholly natural nor entirely alien. It was Earth's desperate attempt to purge itself of invaders who refused to leave peacefully. As the anomalies intensified, communication lines between rival factions became strained. Reports of unexplained phenomena flooded command centers, each more alarming than the last. Scientists on both sides scrambled to analyze data, searching for patterns or explanations. Some theorized that radiation leaks from abandoned nuclear sites might be responsible, while others speculated about extraterrestrial interference. Few dared suggest the truth that Earth itself had become sentient in its suffering, lashing out against those who had wronged it. For soldiers on the front lines, fear mingled with exhaustion. Nights spent huddled in makeshift shelters listening to distant howls and groans tested even the strongest resolve. Equipment malfunctioned inexplicably, leaving troops vulnerable to ambushes and environmental hazards. Supplies dwindled as convoys fell victim to attacks, not just from enemy forces, but from creatures that defied classification. Morale plummeted, replaced by paranoia and mistrust. In the Dominion, leadership responded with characteristic rigidity. Orders came down from high command to maintain discipline and focus on objectives. Any mention of supernatural occurrences was met with swift punishment, reinforcing the notion that weakness would not be tolerated. Yet cracks began to show even in this tightly controlled system. Desertion rates climbed as soldiers chose death over facing another night surrounded by creeping shadows. Whispers of rebellion stirred among lower ranks, though such talk remained carefully concealed. Within the free territories, chaos reigned supreme. Without centralized authority to impose order, panic spread unchecked. Communities fractured along ideological lines, some advocating retreat to underground bunkers, others calling for mass migration to rumored safe zones. Rumors circulated about hidden sanctuaries untouched by disaster, places where clean water flowed and crops still grew. Desperation drove people to believe anything, no matter how implausible. Amidst this turmoil, two individuals found themselves drawn together by circumstance. On the Dominion side, a young officer named Kale stood out not for bravery or skill, but for his ability to think critically. Raised in a culture that prized obedience above all else, he harbored doubts about the mission driving his comrades to madness. His superiors dismissed him as naive, but Kale couldn't shake the feeling that something larger was at play, a force neither side fully understood. On the opposing side, a free territory scout named Lyra navigated the wastelands with unmatched expertise. Years of surviving on the fringes had honed her instincts, teaching her to read signs others overlooked. When she stumbled upon evidence suggesting cooperation between Dominion patrols and rogue AI systems, she realized the stakes were higher than anyone imagined. Alone, neither faction stood a chance against the emerging threat. United, they might have a sliver of hope. Their paths crossed during a skirmish near a crumbling dam, its reservoir long since dried up. What began as a routine engagement devolved into chaos when the ground beneath them split open, revealing churning magma below. Trapped amidst falling debris and encroaching flames, Kale and Lyra made an unspoken pact to prioritize survival over allegiance. Together, they fought their way clear of the collapsing structure, forging a bond born of necessity rather than trust. Kale and Lyra's unlikely alliance marked the beginning of a fragile truce between enemies. At first, their cooperation extended only as far as escaping immediate danger. Each step away from the ruined dam brought fresh challenges, collapsing bridges, toxic fumes, and predatory creatures stalking the ruins. Despite their shared goal, suspicion lingered. Kale questioned whether Lyra sought to betray him once safety was assured, while Lyra wondered if Kale's loyalty to the Dominion outweighed his commitment to survival. Yet as days turned into weeks, mutual reliance fostered understanding. They exchanged information about their respective factions, piecing together a clearer picture of the unfolding catastrophe. Kale revealed details about Dominion experiments designed to harness geothermal energy, projects abandoned when results proved unstable. Lyra shared intel on free territory efforts to reverse engineer ancient agricultural techniques, attempts thwarted by unpredictable weather patterns. Together, they uncovered connections neither had considered before, patterns linking human interference to the planet's escalating retaliation. Their journey led them across landscapes transformed beyond recognition. Vast plains once covered in grass now stretched barren, their soil poisoned by chemical runoff. Mountain ranges crumbled under constant seismic activity, burying entire towns beneath avalanches of rock and ash. Even the oceans, once vast blue expanses, appeared sickly, their surfaces slick with oil spills and plastic waste. Every sight reinforced the urgency of their mission, reminding them that failure meant extinction. Along the way, they encountered others struggling to survive. Families huddled in caves, eking out meager existences on scavenged food and rainwater collected in rusted barrels. Lone wanderers roamed aimlessly, driven mad by isolation and despair. Some begged for help, offering scraps of knowledge or tools in exchange for protection. Others attacked on sight, viewing strangers as threats rather than allies. Through it all, Kale and Lyra pressed onward, gathering followers who recognized the value of unity in a fractured world. Slowly, their group grew. Survivors from both factions joined their cause, drawn by the promise of collaboration over conflict. Among them were engineers capable of repairing damaged machinery, medics skilled in treating injuries inflicted by mutant wildlife, and scholars determined to decipher cryptic messages encoded in geological formations. Each new addition strengthened their resolve, proving that diversity bred resilience. Still, challenges mounted. Resources remained scarce, forcing difficult decisions about rationing and allocation. Conflicts arose over strategy, with some advocating aggressive confrontation of the anomalies and others favoring cautious observation. Trust took time to build, particularly between former adversaries conditioned to view one another as enemies. But through perseverance and shared hardship, bonds formed that transcended old divisions. By the time they reached what remained of a major city, a skeletal skyline jutting from a sea of ash, they had become more than survivors. They were pioneers charting a path toward coexistence, proving that even in the darkest times, humanity possessed the capacity for change. The ruined city loomed ahead. Its skeletal remains a grim reminder of humanity's hubris. Kale and Lyra's group moved cautiously through streets littered with debris, their footsteps muffled by layers of ash. Buildings leaned precariously, some still smoldering from fires that had burned unchecked for years. The air carried the acrid tang of decay, mingling with the faint hum of electrical currents running through exposed wires. It was here, amidst the desolation, that they found evidence of something extraordinary, a network of underground tunnels leading deep into the earth. Scavenging teams uncovered maps etched into walls, detailing pathways that seemed to connect disparate regions. These tunnels appeared to predate the war, relics of an era when humanity sought refuge from surface dangers. But what truly intrigued Kale and Lyra were the symbols carved alongside the maps, patterns resembling those seen in mutated plants and glowing fissures encountered earlier. They realized these markings might hold the key to understanding Earth's transformation. As they delved deeper, tensions flared within the group. Some feared venturing underground, citing tales of caverns collapsing without warning. Others argued it was their best chance at finding sanctuary. Ultimately, survival instincts prevailed, and they pressed on, navigating narrow passages illuminated only by flickering lanterns. The deeper they went, the stranger their surroundings became. Bioluminescent fungi clung to walls, pulsating in sync with distant tremors. Streams of liquid metal flowed like veins through rock formations, emitting low-frequency vibrations that resonated in their bones. It became clear they weren't alone. Shadows moved just beyond the reach of their light, fleeting glimpses of figures neither human nor animal. Whispers echoed through the tunnels, fragmented voices speaking in languages none could decipher. Fear gripped the group, but curiosity outweighed caution. They pressed forward, driven by the hope that answers lay hidden in the depths. Emerging into a vast cavern, the group discovered a sight that defied comprehension. Towering crystalline structures jutted from the ground, refracting light into kaleidoscopic patterns. At the center stood a massive obelisk, its surface covered in the same enigmatic symbols found throughout the tunnels. The air vibrated with energy, and the temperature fluctuated wildly, as though the very laws of physics bent to accommodate this anomaly. Kale approached the obelisk cautiously, his hand brushing against its cool surface. Instantly, images flooded his mind, visions of Earth's past, present, and potential future. He saw ancient civilizations rising and falling, ecosystems thriving then collapsing, and finally, humanity's relentless exploitation culminating in the current catastrophe. The message was clear. Earth had reached its limit, and unless drastic changes occurred, annihilation was inevitable. Lyra watched as Kale staggered back, visibly shaken. She stepped forward, placing her palm on the obelisk, and experienced similar visions. Unlike Kale, however, she focused on one recurring theme: the possibility of redemption. Images of humans working together, healing the land, and restoring balance played out before her eyes. When she withdrew her hand, resolve replaced fear. Turning to the group, she articulated what they all now understood. Survival depended not on domination or retreat, but on cooperation. The obelisk began to shift, its surface rippling like water. From within emerged a form both alien and familiar, a being composed of shifting elements, embodying Earth itself. It communicated not through words, but sensations, conveying its pain and exhaustion. Humanity's actions had wounded it deeply, yet it offered a chance for reconciliation, if they proved willing to change. Returning to the surface, Kale and Lyra faced the daunting task of uniting their fractured world. News of the obelisk spread quickly, sparking debates among survivors. Skeptics dismissed it as myth, while others saw it as proof of divine intervention. Regardless of interpretation, one fact remained undeniable. The anomalies plaguing the planet intensified daily, leaving no room for denial. The ground beneath their feet trembled more frequently, and the skies above churned with unnatural storms that seemed to grow fiercer with each passing day. Kale proposed convening representatives from both factions, arguing that only collective effort could address the crisis. He knew that the Dominion's advanced technology and resources, combined with the Free Territory's adaptability and grassroots ingenuity, could form a powerful alliance. Lyra supported him, leveraging her connections within the Free Territories to rally support. Her reputation as a skilled scout and mediator earned her trust among even the most skeptical rebels, who initially viewed any collaboration with the Dominion as betrayal. Together, they organized a summit in the ruins of the city, transforming crumbling structures into makeshift council chambers. The choice of location was deliberate, a neutral ground where neither side held historical dominance. Tents were erected amidst skeletal skyscrapers, and generators powered dim lights that cast long shadows across the ash-covered streets. Survivors gathered cautiously, eyeing one another with suspicion but drawn by the promise of hope. Negotiations proved contentious. Old grievances resurfaced, threatening to derail progress before it began. Dominion delegates accused the Free Territories of sabotaging infrastructure during the war, while Free Territory leaders countered with accusations of environmental destruction and resource hoarding. Voices rose in anger, fists clenched, and at times it seemed the fragile truce might collapse entirely. Yet amidst the chaos, moments of clarity emerged. A Dominion engineer shared data on atmospheric stabilization techniques, sparking interest from a Free Territory biologist. A medic from the rebel faction offered insights into treating radiation sickness, earning nods of respect from Dominion scientists. What ultimately bridged the divide was not logic or strategy, but empathy. Kale recounted his vision from the obelisk, images of Earth's suffering and humanity's role in its devastation. Lyra spoke of her own revelation, emphasizing the possibility of redemption through unity. Their words resonated deeply, reminding everyone present that survival transcended borders and banners. Slowly, agreements took shape: joint research initiatives, resource-sharing programs, and coordinated efforts to combat environmental threats. For the first time in decades, humanity stood on the brink of something greater than itself, a chance to rewrite its relationship with the planet. Implementation began immediately, though challenges abounded. The sheer scale of the undertaking overwhelmed even the most optimistic planners. Teams worked around the clock to stabilize collapsing infrastructure, often risking their lives in the process. In one particularly harrowing incident, a team attempting to reinforce a dam was caught in a sudden landslide triggered by seismic activity. Miraculously, no lives were lost, but the event underscored the precariousness of their situation. Every step forward felt like 2 steps back, yet determination fueled their perseverance. Scientists collaborated on projects aimed at reversing ecological damage, experimenting with bioengineered organisms capable of detoxifying soil and purifying water. One breakthrough came when a Free Territory agronomist partnered with a Dominion geneticist to develop a strain of algae that thrived in polluted environments. These algae absorbed heavy metals and toxins, gradually restoring balance to contaminated ecosystems. Pilot programs launched in regions once deemed uninhabitable showed promising results, with small patches of greenery emerging from barren wastelands. Engineers designed sustainable technologies powered by renewable energy sources, prioritizing efficiency over profit. Solar panels and wind turbines sprouted across landscapes, replacing fossil fuel-dependent systems. In urban areas, vertical farms integrated into repurposed buildings provided fresh produce year-round, reducing reliance on dwindling agricultural lands. Transportation networks shifted toward electric vehicles and maglev trains, drastically cutting emissions. Even waste management underwent a revolution, with advanced recycling facilities turning trash into usable materials. Public sentiment shifted as tangible improvements emerged. Crops grew in previously barren fields, rivers ran clearer, and skies showed hints of blue. Hope blossomed alongside green shoots, inspiring communities to contribute however possible. Refugees who had once viewed themselves as victims became active participants in rebuilding efforts, sharing knowledge passed down through generations. Children learned about sustainability in schools, planting trees, and tending community gardens as part of their education. Yet not all changes were met with enthusiasm. Some resisted new policies, clinging to old habits out of fear or convenience. Black markets flourished, trading banned substances and outdated technologies. Corruption lingered in corners untouched by reform, undermining trust in leadership. Despite these setbacks, the majority embraced the transformation, recognizing that cooperation offered the only path forward. Despite progress, setbacks tested resolve. A sudden surge in seismic activity destroyed newly restored facilities, forcing evacuations and halting operations. Entire villages were swallowed by sinkholes, their inhabitants left homeless and traumatized. Mutant wildlife attacked settlements, driven by desperation as habitats shrank further. Packs of wolf-like creatures with glowing eyes stalked the outskirts of towns, their howls echoing through the night. Internal conflicts erupted over resource distribution, highlighting lingering inequalities. Yet resilience prevailed. Leaders adapted strategies, redistributing manpower and materials based on need rather than allegiance. Mediators resolved disputes, emphasizing shared goals over individual gain. When a Dominion supply convoy was ambushed by rogue scavengers, Free Territory scouts intervened, ensuring safe passage in exchange for medical aid. Such acts of goodwill, though rare at first, became increasingly common as trust deepened. One pivotal moment occurred when a massive wildfire swept through a region housing both factions' key installations. Instead of retreating, teams from both sides joined forces to contain the blaze, working side by side despite exhaustion and danger. They used fire breaks created by Dominion machinery and traditional firefighting methods employed by Free Territory volunteers. When the flames finally subsided, cheers erupted, not just for victory over the fire, but for the unity it symbolized. Each challenge overcomes strengthened bonds, proving that adversity forged stronger alliances. Stories of heroism spread, inspiring others to set aside differences. Artisans crafted murals depicting scenes of cooperation, adorning walls with vibrant colors that contrasted sharply with the grayness of the past. Music festivals brought people together, celebrating cultural diversity and shared resilience. Months passed, and transformation accelerated. Forests reclaimed abandoned urban sprawls, their roots breaking through concrete to anchor new life. Rivers teemed with fish, their populations bolstered by conservation efforts. Air quality improved, allowing people to breathe freely for the first time in generations. Birds returned to skies once choked with smog, their songs a reminder of nature's resilience. Symbolic gestures accompanied practical changes. Monuments dedicated to fallen soldiers from both sides were erected, honoring sacrifice rather than conflict. These memorials featured plaques inscribed with messages of peace and reconciliation, encouraging reflection on lessons learned. Cultural exchanges celebrated diversity, fostering appreciation for traditions once dismissed as inferior. Elders shared folklore and recipes, passing down wisdom that transcended factional divides. Education systems emphasized cooperation over competition, instilling values essential for long-term survival. Students studied ecology alongside history, learning how interconnected ecosystems mirrored human societies. Classrooms buzzed with discussions about ethical decision-making and responsible stewardship. Extracurricular activities focused on community service, teaching young minds the importance of giving back. Technology played a crucial role in documenting progress. Drones captured footage of restored landscapes, broadcasting images worldwide via improvised communication networks. Social media platforms, once tools for propaganda, transformed into forums for collaboration. Hashtags like #OnePlanet and #TogetherWeSurvive trended, uniting voices across continents. Earth responded positively, its retaliation easing as ecosystems stabilized. Anomalies diminished, replaced by natural phenomena signaling recovery. Rain fell regularly, nourishing parched lands. Temperatures moderated, creating conditions conducive to growth. Glaciers began to reform in polar regions, slowing sea level rise. Coral reefs, once bleached white, regained their vibrant hues as ocean temperatures normalized. Scientists theorized that Earth's consciousness operated cyclically, granting opportunities for redemption when thresholds neared collapse. By seizing this chance, humanity demonstrated capacity for change, earning temporary reprieve. However, they cautioned against complacency, warning that continued vigilance was necessary to maintain equilibrium. Monitoring stations established near fault lines and volcanic zones tracked geological activity, providing early warnings of potential hazards. Philosophical debates arose about humanity's place within the broader web of life. Spiritual leaders incorporated environmental ethics into doctrines, urging followers to view themselves as stewards rather than conquerors. Artists created works exploring themes of interconnectedness, using mediums ranging from sculpture to virtual reality. Literature flourished, with novels and essays examining what it meant to live harmoniously with nature. Decades later, descendants looked back on the Great Reconciliation with pride. Textbooks recounted tales of bravery and sacrifice, emphasizing lessons learned. Cities rebuilt harmonized with nature, incorporating green spaces and sustainable practices. Economies thrived on principles of equity and stewardship. Trade routes reopened, facilitating exchange of goods and ideas without exploitation. Though scars remained, both physical and emotional, they served as reminders of fragility and resilience. Stories of Kale and Lyra inspired future generations, symbolizing hope born from despair. Statues of the duo stood in public squares, gazing toward horizons filled with possibility. Their legacy endured, guiding humanity toward brighter futures. Youth organizations adopted names like the Kale-Lyra Initiative, focusing on global issues such as climate justice and biodiversity preservation. Annual festivals commemorated their journey, featuring reenactments and speeches by leaders committed to carrying the torch of unity. Scholarships funded research into sustainable innovations, ensuring that progress continued unabated. Yet complacency threatened hard-won gains. As prosperity returned, so did temptations of excess. Corporations sought loopholes to exploit resources, politicians angled for power, and individuals prioritized convenience over responsibility. Luxury goods reappeared on markets, tempting consumers with promises of comfort and status. Environmental regulations faced pushback from industries reluctant to adopt stricter standards. Vigilance became paramount, ensuring sacrifices weren't forgotten. Activists emerged, advocating vigilance and accountability. Grassroots movements pressured leaders to uphold commitments, leveraging media to amplify messages. Documentaries exposed corporate malfeasance, galvanizing public outrage. Protests erupted outside government buildings, demanding transparency and action. Innovators developed tools enabling transparency, empowering citizens to monitor progress. Blockchain technology tracked carbon footprints, holding individuals and corporations accountable for emissions. Smartphone apps allowed users to report violations anonymously, creating decentralized networks of oversight. Education campaigns highlighted consequences of inaction, reinforcing urgency. Through constant effort, balance persisted. Humanity walked a tightrope between ambition and restraint, aware that missteps could undo centuries of work. Debates raged about how much growth was sustainable, balancing economic needs with ecological limits. Philosophers pondered whether true harmony required scaling back technological advancements altogether. In the end, survival hinged not on technology or ideology, but humility. Recognizing interconnectedness allowed humans to coexist with Earth rather than dominate it. Challenges persisted, but unity provided strength to face them. Cooperation became ingrained in culture, shaping everything from governance to daily interactions. As stars twinkled above a rejuvenated planet, children played beneath skies free of smog. Elders shared stories of darkness overcome, instilling gratitude and determination. Though uncertainty lingered, faith in collective potential sustained hope. Humans learned that true progress wasn't measured by conquest or wealth, but by ability to thrive alongside nature. If this story resonates with you, consider subscribing for more thought-provoking content exploring humanity's triumphs and trials. Together, we can imagine and create a better future.